Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Perspective with Viv podcast. My name is Viv, and this is the show. Today's title is How Good is God with Kristen Wambach. We've had Kristen over here before, and now we're going to be talking about her new book. So let me reintroduce you to her. From her roots as an Oregon farm girl to her evolution as a seasoned transformational leader, Kristen Wambach embodies both the mystical and practical nature of Christ. With over 30 years of experience as an ordained pastor, alongside her work as an entrepreneur and CEO, she's living proof of what happens when the goodness of God redefines your yes. Kristen is the host of the Interviewing Jesus podcast and the author of the 400-page investigative work, How Good is God? She doesn't simply teach theology, she equips others with a bold, unconventional blueprint for those ready to challenge limitations, transcend religious boundaries, and live spiritually brave. A trusted mentor in bridging heaven and earth, Kristen stands as an investigative journalist of the spirit. Hi, Kristen. Thank you for
Hi.
joining me.
Hi, Viv. Hi, listeners. So much fun. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm so excited to have you back. I missed your energy. Oh my goodness.
Oh, oh, it's just so exciting.
Yes. So let's talk about the book immediately. So
Yes.
when I started reading it, I love the way it's written. I think it's written for me. It's definitely considered nonfiction, but it seemed like fiction to me. The voice of it is very whimsical, very bouncy. Your energy comes through the words. I
Thank
feel
you.
cheered on as you describe things. I loved how you started off with the downloads, the text messages from God, and how you see, art is a beautiful medium, especially film. You use different films and downloads from films to, send messages across. I love that. Let's talk about that first of all. Tell me
Well,
about God's text messages.
it happened exactly as I wrote it one night. I mean, it was super blustery out, and I'm trying to figure out how am I going to squish all of this into a book. How am I gonna squish this? And God woke me up 5 times, and one of the times, my son, our oldest son, who's a Marine, he texted dad at 2 in the morning, and so that's those he was part of the whole God saying, "Hello, let's
Oh, wow.
rearrange the book this way." But it was so important for me to set a timeline for people, for readers. We need to realize what God has done already, look over the span of our life. How has he been talking so that we can come to this point, not a point of agreement necessarily, but a point of, okay, this is what God has released thus far. Now, can we talk from here? And that's what the text messages were, because God wanted us to say, "Okay, logic, we need to shake you up a little bit and figure out how are we thinking about God's goodness."
That
And
makes
that's
sense.
why the movies that came through that God used in the text message, the movies is kinda like, things aren't we're not broken. Well, it's not hopeless. It's God is so much better than our bandwidth about him. And so he's challenging our thinking. He wants us to think and then ask him the simple question, well, how good are you, God, in this situation?
That's a good question. And I guess that's what we're about to find out from your perspective as we talk more about it. So I love your description. And for me, so many things to take from it at first read. I liked the playbook football terminology that you used. Yes. Oh my goodness. Um, I have a question on it. Yes, I had. Let me find it. So you often use football metaphors, the red zone, the end
Mhm,
zone, suiting
mhm.
up. How does a sports mindset help a person move from being a spectator in the pews to actually experiencing the supernatural?
See, I had all these encounters. I knew that I needed to share. That was my passion. I had to share my encounters in the lower realms of the earth, like nobody talks about this stuff. Nobody talks about encountering Jesus in the tomb and asking the question, "Hey, what happened for those 3 days? Hello? What happened those 3 days when you were in the tomb before when Holy Spirit came and resurrected you? I mean, what happened?" And so much significantly happens there, and so I had to ask that. So, you take these mystical encounters, and if people aren't used to the mystical or the supernatural, when you put them in a structure like football, it helps them to unpack them. And that's the reason why I used football. It all started with I absolutely love coaching quotes. They motivate me. They speak my language. Vince Lombardi, he speaks my language. I understand it and it motivates me. And that's where the whole book started. And then it just developed. And we put mystical things in a structure so people could learn and feel strong and confident in a structure.
I love that you said that. You put mystical things in a structure for it to be easily assimilated. Because from the way you described it, from the way you've written this book, my mind is already being held because of the manner with which you're delivering your message. And I think the football terminology is very, very good because it cuts across a lot. Americans love football so much. I mean, we have the Super Bowl and everything. It's just brilliant, the medium through which you deliver this message, because I was hooked already. So you opened the book by saying we don't just have it wrong about God's goodness. We were taught a version that missed it entirely. You called this book a manifesto, an epistle. What made you decide the church needed a manifesto right now in 2026?
Ugh. I can't take credit for it like that. It means God kicked my butt and said, "You have to share." I mean, literally the death doctrines themselves. Do we have any idea how many people believe that if a person commits suicide, they are doomed to hell? That is so wrong. That is just so wrong, and that's the reason why that's the reason why I had to write my experiences because Jesus showed me specifically his goodness, and I encountered it, and that had to be changed. Can you imagine being a parent and losing a child that way? And then you feel like there's nothing you can do. That is so it's wrong. We were taught wrong.
I feel like even with all of that, I love how you made it clear that people that commit suicide don't necessarily are not necessarily condemned, which begs or calls people to start to re-question what it is that they've been taught or what it is that they've been indoctrinated with. And that's very important because I get that with your book, with your messages, you're trying to let people see God from a different way that is outside a particular rigid structure. And
Mhm.
you're introducing a new structure that feels softer, less condemning, less judging, and a place where they can find belonging without feeling prejudiced against or judged or, having some form of classist subjection to classism in some way. So I really
Yes.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes. There's something you said that I also wanted to talk about. If I remember, I'll let you know. But I love
Okay.
that I love that response.
Yeah. And one of the things about God is sometimes we forget that he's God. We forget that he's God and we forget that he's a good father. And like a good father, he planned everything so his kids couldn't outrun him. There isn't
Outrun.
anything that we can do
Mm.
that will shock God. There isn't anything that we can do that would get him to separate us from his love. Absolutely nothing. And how prideful is it of us to think that we can make a choice to separate ourselves from God?
Mm.
Hello.
Wow, I love that because I do think you spoke about union when, in the Bible where it spoke about, you become one with God. I'm paraphrasing by taking part of his flesh and drinking his blood. But
Mhm.
really, what you were explaining was union that we're being called to be like brothers and sisters as opposed to separate from God as a force.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
tell me more about that, please.
Force is a fine word. So in communion, when we take communion, think I was recently shared with this recently in a perspective. When Adam fell, when he misjudged God, when he fell, he did it through eating. Eve ate an apple, she shared an apple with Adam. So through eating, mankind fell. So the the coolness and the of God is, well, how does he redeem mankind is through communion, through eating. So what when we have communion, when we take his flesh and his blood, all of his promises of who he is, when we eat that, that helps our body to remember that it is restorable. God created us to our body to remember to restore itself. And there
That's it.
isn't any portion of our body that cannot remember to restore itself.
I like that you spoke about how, through eating, drinking, you're becoming in communion and union with Jesus. But through eating the apple, the forbidden apple, was what brought about separation, or the illusion of separation. Because from then, they were cast out of the Garden of Eden and they were brought onto earth. And then they started this journey. And obviously, our journey is kind of like to return into union with God.
Mhm.
Oof, I love that.
It's if you think about our first estate being in him and who Adam was, you
I
think
like the word
about
estate.
a state, yeah, when you think about that, and he walked with God in the cool of the day, and Adam walked back and forth between both realms. Enoch walked back and forth between both realms. Jesus today in his resurrected self walks, that's the reason why he's got his body. He walks back and forth between both realms. That is what our original estate is supposed to do, to be able to walk with this body, immortal body, between heaven and earth, between both realms. Well, yeah, we have a bit to go. We have a bit to change our thinking and the restoration of our body for that to occur, but it's still what Christ did for us. He redeemed us to that.
Wow. So Christ was a bridge through which we could walk back into union with ourselves. Yes, because from what I'm getting, the Bible was written for us to know that we are like Jesus, right? So if Jesus did the work to act as a bridge, it shouldn't be hard for us to go back into union quickly. It shouldn't be hard for us to take that leap and like be back in line with God instead of outrunning God.
Mhm. Well, we
Yeah.
think we're outrunning him, which is really
Yeah,
silly.
that's funny. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
But
just
I love
really
that you use
silly.
that term.
We can't outrun God. he wouldn't be God if we could.
Yes. So maybe attempting to outrun God,
I
because I
know.
guess a lot of people do end up like using distractions to block them from union back with God.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but God
Okay.
is he's just better than our bandwidth, and yes. I don't remember what your last question was. You Did I
What
answered
made you
every
decide the church needed the manifesto right now?
Yes, yes. Yeah. It's because I could if God shows you an answer and you encounter an answer, you have to be responsible to share the answer.
Okay.
We can't
That makes
keep
sense.
these things to
Ourselves.
ourselves. And like in which chapters? I don't remember all the chapters or all the things. Oh, there's
There's so many chapters.
I talk about I encountered people. I knew that I knew that I knew that people went a certain person went to hell, so to speak. And
Oof.
I knew that that was not God's desire, that wasn't God's plan. And through that, I encountered a fabulous testimony where a very dear person to me got healed of stage 4 breast cancer
Yeah. Wow.
just because I believed God. And
Mm.
and that just happens, again, that was and we just can't keep the mystical hidden because it might feel uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. We can't keep the mystical hidden because it might feel uncomfortable. And the mystical seems like a key to the world, like the key to true freedom or true realization, actualization of self.
Mhm,
That's how I feel.
mhm. Well,
Now, in
everything begins in the unseen,
yes.
when we get an idea, like a
Yeah.
book, like this pen, like the
Mm-hmm.
car you're driving. All
Mm,
those things were a thought process, an idea that began in somebody's head, and
mm,
you couldn't see the idea. It didn't have a physical form until
mm-hmm.
somebody started go, "Oh, well, what happens if we did it this way? And what happens if we
Mm,
did it this way?" And they start to put
mm-hmm.
it together. Well, now what began in the unseen is something that is tangible, like your pen or your car or your house.
Yeah.
Einstein talks an awful lot about
So in the book, you talk about the Hell Gate and the Pew Gate. Why do you
Uh-huh.
call How Good is God a dangerous book for the modern church?
Let me read this. This was it just that word dangerous, right?
Yeah.
And I go, "Oh, yes, God." I'm gonna read let me get it here. I actually Alright, so this was my editing team. This is how they described the book.
Okay.
Most Christian nonfiction play it safe. They either stay in the shallow end of 5 steps to a better life, yada, yada, or they go to the deep end of dry theology. Your book refuses to do either. It is walking right into the field of blood, suicide, hell, the afterlife, unfinished family business, and plants a flag of hope there. It's bold, it's visually
Beautiful.
cinematic, and frankly, it is needed. That is where the word dangerous
Wow, I
arrives.
love that. Yeah. I love that they said that you are putting a flag of hope in the midst of all of that, because it brings me back to one of the text messages in I would like to see the first chapter, because when I was looking through the table of contents, one thing that I noticed that I liked was you spoke about instruments first of all before you moved into the play sheet. Am I correct? I love that.
Yes.
I'd love to know more about that. So let's put a pin in that, because I don't
Okay.
want to lose my thoughts. What was I going to say? You see, I've lost it. No, we have to get it back.
So, what I have experienced, the redemptive gifts. So there's ministry gifts, there's redemptive gifts. The ministry gifts that are talked about are influences that God gives us as a body to help mature us. Redemptive
Mm.
redemptive gifts that are talked about in Romans 12, those are gifts that are both heaven and earth. They are
Okay.
embedded within us. So I have encountered those gifts through inner healing, ministry, but they were in heaven as well.
Oh.
And I went, "Oh my gosh." So it was really fun for me to explain them as if they were, an instrument or part of a symphony,
Oh, fair
because
enough.
each one of us can relate to a redemptive gift and see ourselves different portions of a symphony, because what it does is God is orchestrating that perfect harmony, that perfect sound when we come into union with one another.
Mm. Interesting. Wow. Oof. That's a lot. I love that. And I did remember my thought. Like I said, they said that your writing, your book on theology is like a white flag in the midst of chaos. And it reminded me of that text message in which you said, find Jesus in the midst of offense. Do you remember? And it
Mhm.
was you said that finding Jesus in the midst of the chaos. Yeah,
Yes.
I that's how I feel. That's how I
Yeah.
feel without even diving so deep into the book. I was like,
Right.
oh, this is kind of like a flashlight of hope in all these things that people are experiencing.
Mhm.
Which is why you saying that you had a friend that was cured of stage 4 breast cancer, like belief was that ray of hope in the midst of all the chaos. And I think
Mhm.
that's very profound. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm. That the flag stick, which is a golfing term if you play golf, the
Mm,
flag stick is what marks the hole. For
yes.
too long, we have allowed death to say, "This is it. This is your end place. You have to die before you can experience heaven," and all that good stuff. It's just like, it's wrong. It's just
Yes.
wrong.
Because heaven and hell is a state of consciousness, right? Oh, did I say this last time? And I think you actually did the same thing here when I
Did I
said
do the
that.
same
You just did the same thing
Okay.
last time. Then you explained
There
why.
there are there are when the word consciousness and my experience with consciousness, with talking to people about consciousness. So, consciousness is attached to the soul. The soul is to the realm of the earth. The spirit, now the soul is the conduit that speaks. The soul goes both heaven and earth. So it's a conduit, but there is more past the consciousness, because the consciousness is within the quantum realm, the vibration, the frequency, the sound, the matter here. But there's more, and that would include the cosmos, other planets, everything that's still within the spoken realm of when God created heaven and earth. But there is, when you step through Jesus Christ himself, the the rent veil, his flesh, when you step through that, you go into him, you go beyond the quantum realm. So when the consciousness, so you made the statement, you made the statement that heaven and hell are in consciousness. They are in my experience, they are a place.
Hmm.
They are a
Okay.
place. I'm They are a place. I've encountered so many places in the lower realm of the earth that have a, I'll say, a type a t typography, is that the right word? For they have a mass to them. When I first in when Jesus took me into the lower realms of the earth, and I talked about in my book before I knew that people who had committed suicide, before that encounter happened, Jesus took me in literally to the field of blood, the one that scripture tells us about where Judas expired himself. So that shows me that there is a formal place, a landmass that explains a spiritual place. One explained the other.
Mm,
So when I that's why when I hear the word consciousness, I go, I'm not ready to erase out that they don't have matter.
fair enough.
Just like Abraham's bosom. My encounter with my Hebrew roots, and that's in the book as well. When I encountered that, it was so type and shadow to Abraham's bosom, and
Hmm.
that is described in scripture so many times.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
there is a touchable mass that actually houses the soulish realm of people.
Hmm.
So that's
Wow.
why with consciousness, I am careful with that because I think there's so much more to learn, and I don't want to pigeonhole myself in to not being open for to learn more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Wow. Thank you so much for explaining that. Okay. So you've coined a term called PDE, past death experience. How is that different from a near death experience? And why is it essential for healing our personal history?
Mm. I actually took it as a play on words, because near death experience, which people are fascinated by them. They have out of body experiences, they have the tunnel of light, they have emotional intensity, the life review. When they go in, they have this light review. There's so much of the unknown that comes to the forefront. So I did a play on the words. Instead of near death is a past death experience. And the reason why I say that is Jesus died for us. He died as us. What part of death are we not freed from? So we're past it. He says he redeems us from the curse. He redeems us. In Romans 8:2, it says, "The law of the Spirit of life has set me free from sin and death." Therefore, what that has done, that is a higher law that eradicates out sin, death, and all the cohorts. Sin, sickness is tied with sin, death, all decay. What part of that does what Jesus did for us? There is, it just rules it out. I love a portion in my book, and I put it into a perspective, a metaphor perspective of a carousel. And how this gorgeous horses are going round and round on the carousel, and all up and round, but they're stuck in the cycle of the pattern of going around. Well, if you take Romans 8:2, the law of spirit of life set you free, now all of a sudden the horse can leave the cycle of the carousel. But then there's all these agreements. The ticket master, "Oh, I've already sold tickets for you," or the little boy with the sticky hands, "And I wanna ride that horse. I wanna ride that horse," right? So we allow our understanding, our ego to actually keep us attached to the cycle of sin and death, even how we understand God, and we don't allow the higher law to actually redeem us fully, to eradicate sickness from ever having any permission to live in our body.
Wow. So are you saying that because Jesus died for everyone's sins,
Mhm,
we've overcome having death and sickness as a limitation,
right.
and it's only like a level of belief that lets you transcend sickness, that lets you transcend maybe being on death's door.
Let's take that word transcend, because I don't wanna put the pressure on you and me. It's who
Interesting.
he is.
Wow. Okay.
He cannot not be who he is. We can't undo his gift. Again, it's
Mm.
like when we're talking about God and his goodness,
Mm-hmm.
he's good daddy that he thought everything out before he sent the kids outside to play.
Yeah.
And Jesus's gift is so full that we cannot not receive it. Now we can make a choice of ignoring it. We can make a choice of not allowing it to fulfill our life. We do have that free will choice, but it doesn't lessen the fact that it is superior, and the law of the spirit is superior and eradicates death and decay. Now it talks about in the gospels
Mm.
with Peter. Peter was named, "On this rock we will build the church, and the gates of hell will not prevail." Well, if the gates of hell are not going to prevail, then that means we need to come in and eradicate that the gates even exist.
So true. So true in so many ways. Wow. You know, what I love about this theory that you're sharing is that it's deeply resonant. Like it's heavy stuff, and that's why your book is 400 pages. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, it's the encounters that I share, they're so they're so deeply personal. We were
Mm.
talking earlier about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what became so personal is that my first love, we all have first loves in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. That person that was forever engrafted in our heart as this special person that one day, after Jesus had already started me on what I call in my tomb days, meaning I was learning about the lower realms of the earth. He was taking
Okay.
me there. So it talks about when Jesus died and he was in the tomb, he led captivity captive. He went into the lower realms of the earth to get back the keys. So,
Mm.
right there is my legal right because Jesus experienced it. Therefore, we can experience it.
Mm.
That is a true doctrine. A doctrine has to be established on Jesus's experience. So, anyhow, one day my best friend from high school Facebooked me, and she said, "I thought that you should know that Randy committed suicide." I did wanna know, and immediately, I knew exactly in my heart, I knew what God was asking me to do, to go get him. I knew
How?
that I knew that I knew that he was in hell.
Oh, wow.
And the cool thing, you just have to read the story, but the cool thing when it occurred, prior to that, that's when Jesus led me into the actual encounter of the field of blood. There's a Greek word for it, it's not coming to mind, that Judas took his own life. There was a reason why Jesus had me encounter that. So what encountering that means that we transcended together. In the spirit, he took me back in time to actually encounter that place. And then when this occurred, a real life happening occurred. Somebody that I care for deeply took their own life. I knew that I knew that I knew that that's where he was. And you have to read the whole story. But when I went to this place and it was a different, I used the word typography, and I don't know if that's the exact word for describing the, like a map, when you see a 3D map. But different portions of the lower realms of the earth have different landscapes. And when I went to go get Randy, and he didn't recognize me at first, but when he did, the first thing that he said out of his mouth is, "I knew that you would come for me."
Really?
Yes, that's the
Wow.
first thing that he said to me. I mean, you can't you can't think this stuff. I know people, you just because God ties up ends. It's just so beautiful. So when we're not near death, we are past death because of what Jesus did for us. We are past it, and we need to retrain ourselves to know him, to encounter him, to hang out with him, to have a conversation with him, to believe him, and to read scripture from that perspective, that we're already past it. Now we just
Interesting.
need to learn how to live it so that our immortal bodies can begin to manifest.
Mm. Wow. Thank you for breaking that down for me. So profound. So our immortal bodies can begin to manifest. What does that
Right?
look like beyond? Yeah, what does that look like in practical terms?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm that's right where I'm asking it. That's just right where. So mm, the way that I deal with my own body, like if I have a pain or if I have something that's bothering me, instead of, releasing healing, I speak to it now and I tell the decay to move.
Whoa, powerful.
Decay, go, because I know death and decay do not have a portion in my life, in your life. There has no portion. So that's just a different
Hmm.
way. I went through a period of my life where we say so many things that put ourselves in agreement with death.
Hmm.
Our words, our
So
conversation.
true.
So
Wow.
this is just a portion of us retraining our understanding to actually have it manifest.
Hmm. Interesting.
When one of the coolest things that Jesus did is when one of the first times I went into the tomb, because I was asking him, "Well, what went on there? Can you tell me here?" And then they have the scriptures about him folding his little head napkin, and then the scriptures that talk about the rest of the linen, the part that
Mm-hmm.
covered his body,
Mm,
that it was messy.
mm,
And So I'm a curious person, and so when he took me into the tomb, I literally saw his body there. I saw his body sit up, and he stood up, and I saw him fold his head napkin, and I went, "Okay." Now, the first thing, I gotta believe that he's showing me this. There's a
Mm,
measure of belief. I gotta
yes.
believe him.
Yes.
I just simply believe what Jesus shows me. If I have questions, I will ask him later and say, "Can you help me with this?" Da, da, da. I just simply believe him like a child. You know, a child believes their parents when say, "Go visit Santa Claus, the tooth fairy, and all the." I mean, you just believe what he shows you. So, the coolest thing, so Jesus, and he was typically dressed like Jesus. He had on the white linen thing with the little cord thing and the sandals, typical Jesus, right? And the first thing he did, and it was so odd. He bent over and he grabbed the soil, the dirt inside the tomb, and you're talking about dirt that's gray and dusty, has never see hasn't seen the light of day or any moisture, and it's just like there's just nothing to it, it's air, and he goes like this, and he hits his shoulder, he has this dirt in his hand, he hits in his shoulder like somebody who was doing the little throwing salt over their shoulder for luck.
Mhm.
He hit his shoulder, the dirt went over, and I looked at him. I didn't ask him what he did, why he did that. I all of a sudden, I bent over, grabbed some of the soil, and I hit it, and I copied him.
Mm, interesting.
And after that, then he taught me and said, because he was raised from the dead, that means he eradicated, because Adam was made from the soil, the dust of the earth. When he did that, he was telling the dust of the earth, "You no longer have authority over me."
Whoa.
And then I just went, "Boy, that put the awe and the wonder to, I don't understand this."
Wow. Profound.
And then he an immortal body. Okay, well, I can't explain to you how that all's gonna work. Well, that's okay. I'm willing to learn.
Mm.
I'm willing to walk. I've seen, now this wasn't in the book. I have seen my 165th birthday.
What? What did that look like?
That's 2079.
That's crazy.
Before I saw that, I saw my 121st birthday, and the cool thing when he showed me, so I had, this was my birthday present on my 50th birthday
Mm.
from the Lord, and he took me, and I'm walking on the timeline, and you can see the timeline, and you can see the years, and I remember looking from the timeline into the years, and I remember seeing events that happened in that year, because I remember passing Princess Di's year when she passed away.
Oh.
I remember walking past that, and all of a sudden, he took me to this place. If you remember what old musical amplification looked like, they used tubes. Like, amplification used to use tubes where you'd screw them in almost like a light bulb. And Jesus took me and had me put 2 different, I traded out 2 different tubes. I'll put it into another spiritual that we understand, is I went in and changed the color and the frequency of portions of me.
Mm. Wow.
I saw myself step on my 121st birthday. That was the first time.
Mm.
But he altered some of the color, and you and I know what we're talking about when we say color, what's going on there. And so he came in and changed it, and then while I'm there, I asked him, "Where are my boys?"
Hmm.
And I saw all of my children, and they were in their 90s.
Hmm.
So from
Nice.
that, how that was one of my I'm 66, that was when I was 50, and
Okay.
part of the things that I do is I take that was the year two 2079. So
Oh, you
immediately
said, yeah.
2079 is my 121st birthday, 2124 is my 165th birthday, and the reason why I know that is because I use them.
You
I
use what?
start I start using them in my daily applications. I use them as little things, and to me, that is just because how faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God, so I'm using in them in my everyday life. And that just reminds me, and it reminds me. And in my spirit, that is my way of changing my molecular makeup.
Wow, that makes so much sense. So let me get this right. From being able to see you at older ages, and you kind of like absorbed, you kind of absorb the frequency from those times into your daily practice to sort of like change your molecules to match where you're envisioning yourself to go or who you're envisioning yourself to be.
Yeah. It's like if like I have a vision board here on
Mm.
my in my I have a divider here for recording, so recording sounds better in my room. So I have all these vision things here. It's like a vision board. When we start engaging our dreams, engaging our goals, engaging what Jesus says about us, it begins to change us. If I start saying, if I want to lose weight, and I set my intent, well, I'm not going to eat past 7 o'clock at night so that I'm fully digested, right? That is putting your body into an activation that will actually begin you will begin to lose weight. That's like a different kind of a vision board. So
Mm.
when I have all these little things here that are all prophetic little words that Jesus tells me, and when we make them tangible and we bring them to life in our daily life, that keeps our faith stimulated and it changes us.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
changes how the universe responds to us. And so I'm activating the resurrection that Jesus clearly says he gave me.
Wow. That's so profound. Mm.
So when I take communion with the same intent. And that intent constantly grows as you experience his goodness.
Mm. Nice. Oof. There's a question I have about chapter 3. There's a mirror translation quote that clearly became a turning point for you. The idea that Jesus isn't here to impress us, he's here to persuade us about us. What does that distinction mean for someone who has been striving their whole faith life to earn God's approval?
If you keep going on that particular quote, which is in the commentary, he says to persuade about us, and he says, if I have to take you to the lower realms of the earth to see your hell,
Oh
to
no.
persuade you. And that's I say specifically in the book, I needed persuading. I needed to Jesus realized for me to believe my own freedom, he's gonna show me what he did to free me.
Wow. And you know, you already spoke about how you've gone to the lower realms before. You've been there. You were even in the tomb. You were in hell. You went to bring your friend back. Were those forms of persuasion for you?
Of course they are. That's that's the first time, I mean, you go and, he takes me down, he takes me and I explain them quite
Mm.
quite a bit in the book, and he takes me in and I see this is the gates of hell, and it literally looks like some
Whoa.
ranch dried posts, and I went, "There ain't anybody here's gardening. Nobody there's no how this wouldn't even hold back any livestock. How can it hold back people?" You
Mm.
know? It's so God continues to reveal who he is. It tells us in scripture that God is an all-consuming fire.
Mm.
How is hell described? Fire.
Fire. Wow.
So we're held God gives us free will, and we have the right to hold on to our anger. We have the
Mm.
right to hold on to our bitterness. We have that right. He will not step over that.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what places us in a place that we would call hell.
Mm. Yeah.
God gives us that freedom. Doesn't mean we're outside of his presence. And it certainly doesn't mean that that is a forever choice.
Mm.
And I
I hear
love the
you.
story about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. The king was just going to fry their butts because they would not bow down to him. They said they would not bow down to him. So what did he do? He set them in a fire. And it
Mm.
clearly says in scripture that the king could see them walking around in the fire. And there was not just three of them, but there was four. That means there was Jesus was in there. And to me, I look at that and I go, they walked around in the fire, were not consumed, burned, and didn't even smell like smoke. So I'm having past death experiences because I simply believe him.
Mm.
I didn't always believe this way.
Okay.
I didn't always believe this way, but I do now because he has shown me how he saved me.
Wow. I just keep saying wow because it's so deep, it's so resonant. And yes, I feel like this conversation that we're having is really something that would rouse up even more belief in people that are already believers, as well as enable them to look at things from a different perspective. But I'm thinking about the skeptic's perspective. And my question is, you write to skeptics directly in this book. I'm not asking you to dismantle your theology. I'm asking you to expand your expectation. Who are you picturing when you wrote that?
Can you ask yourself on that one?
No.
Who would you picture? And a person any person who cannot sit down and have a conversation about the love of God. We may it's not about, "I'm going to push my opinion on you because I want you to change yours,"
Yeah,
but I will ask you, anybody who presents a theory, I will ask them, "And how did Jesus show that to you?"
I
Oh,
like
if they
that.
went like this and they opened up their Bible and said, "Well, it's written down here," I'd go, "Excuse me, no, how did he show that to you?" Because
Yeah,
the rhema word, rhema, means it's a shared conversation. I heard him say it to me.
Hmm. And what's the first step towards Rema? Is it being able to listen?
Yeah, I think you answered your own question.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you and I so the arraignment, there's a conversation that goes back and forth,
Yes.
just like you and I are having a conversation that's going back and forth. If
Yeah.
you sat here and asked me questions and I didn't respond, you could not base any opinion because you didn't hear anything.
Yes. So, quick question. Would you
Mhm.
say that that's the difference between Logos faith and Rema faith? Logos seems one sided, and Rema is an open conversation. What do you think?
Logos is a story that somebody else has written down.
Ooh, all right.
It's a story, and it can be truth, it can be not truth. It's a story that somebody's written down. We have the privilege of going into people's stories and saying, "Jesus, would you make this my own?" And that's the difference between the Logos and the Rhema. So, scripture in itself, words printed, ink printed on a page, cannot hug you, it cannot save you, it cannot pay your power bill. It until the words become spoken, become breath. Because when they have breath, then they carry light, and when they carry light, then it means then it can attach itself to you or expand itself within you. So, you hear a conversation, it goes in your hearing, but you also see their body movement, their perceptions, you can perceive it. If we were in the same room, if we were sitting in the same room, you probably are a physical touch kinda lady, and you might reach out and just tap me on the hand. So, therefore, that means I would perceive it tangibly and bodily. So, we have all these different ways to perceive a conversation. I may have developed my seeing gift more than others, but then there's people who are feelers and they can walk in a room and they can feel the presence of God. They can feel angels in there. They can feel it. That's still a live conversation that they are ingesting and hearing. And until we ingest it and it has light on it, the ink doesn't lift off the page and change our life. I knew of Jesus as a child. I believed him as a child, but I didn't begin to transform until I knew him and his ability to save me. That's when I changed.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, for my final question, as this book is a 400-page divine playbook, if a listener feels stuck or spiritually blind today, what is the one activation they can do right now to begin seeing how good God really is?
Years ago, well, we sing songs. We write songs, we sing songs about Ephesians 1:18.
Hmm.
Paul's prayer about open up the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open up my understanding for that spiritual awakening. We cry out for it. We sing about it. We read about it, people write books about it,
Mm.
but do we really allow him to open it? So years ago, I'm going to share with you how I learned not only to see, but how I learned that the gift was not just for me.
Okay.
Because people immediately, if you're a super spiritual person or a nut fruit and flake, they label you that, "Oh, God gifted you that way. That's just for you." Or you must be one of those title people like prophet or
Mm.
evangelist, or you must have a
Or chosen
title.
one. Yeah.
Yes. And so because you're titled, God gave you that gift, so that doesn't include me. But I knew that I knew that I knew that it was a gift for everybody. I went to a conference with James Goll, and he wrote a book called The Seer. I'm seeing in the spirit. I can't talk to people about it because 'cause they'd think I was weird
Yeah.
and odd. Who can you talk about? So I felt very alone, and, is this really you just kinda like, "Am I going crazy here or what?" But I just believed God, and he wrote this book on seers, and he laid out all in the Old Testament how there were prophets that were seers and yada yada, and I went, "Okay, good, I'm not crazy. Yay, God." But while I was at this conference, I had this vision, and I saw the room, and it had 6 very tall ladders in the room. I came home from the conference, and I had a dream that night, and I saw the 6 ladders in the room. They're really tall, like cherry-picking ladders, really tall ones, and I saw James Goll, who was the speaker, who I honor and admire, and I saw him close up his ladder, take it down, and carry it out of the room, but there were 5 ladders left, and I went, "Oh," because we always assume that when you see a big, powerful speaker, when they pack up their bag and their goods and they take their spiritual gifts with them. No. So that is how God, so when I saw that there were 5 ladders in there, which is the number of grace, I knew that every one of those ladders meant that every single person has the ability to perceive God. And I use the word perception because it's not just seeing. Like what I said, there's feeling, there's different portions that you perceive it. We are made uniquely that way. And then we come back and ask ourselves, and we look what the Bible tells us. Jesus encountered, how was he really the mystical dude? Did anyone actually look that Jesus was really supernatural and mystical? I mean, you think about it. My favorite part is when he went up on the Mount of Transfiguration, right? He went up on the Mount of Transfiguration and he was transfigured and he turned white and all glowy. But where we missed the point is when he went to this spiritual realm, he took some people with him. He took Peter, James, and John with him into the spiritual realm. So that tells me 2 things. First of all, Jesus did it. He took people with it. If Jesus did it, I can do it and I can take people with me as well because he did it. And that was where he witnessed his transfiguration. He witnessed his immortal body. So for listeners, everybody can see, hear, feel, perceive the goodness of God. Ask Jesus to show you.
Short and sweet. Thank you for that. Were you done?
I can always keep going.
That's
Okay,
okay.
can I give one more metaphor that really helps with
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
So, it's a very easy tool, and I explain spiritual things this way so much as we're learning. So, when a submarine goes below the surface, they use what is called sonar to be able to tell the floor of the ocean looks like, to tell what's out there. We on old movies, they'd say, "Ping, ping," and when it ping, it means it caught the sonar bounced off of something, either the floor of the earth or something that was in the ocean. It went ping. That's the same way in the spirit. When we step into a room and turn on the light, our eyes have to adjust to the light before we see. So when you step somewhere in the spirit, you allow your spirit to ping the room, and then you begin to feel, "Oh, well, it kind of feels like I'm here, God." And you talk in conversation, and Jesus go, "Yeah, what else do you feel? What else do you see?" And so a person who might feel stuck or blind, that's a really good word to begin with. Jesus, why do I feel stuck? And why did I choose that one particular word, stuck? Jesus, what do you think about that word stuck? Is that true? And always trust what he shows you.
Mm,
Write it down.
mm.
Take your lipstick and put it on the mirror what he said to you that morning. Put sticky notes around your house. When you honor somebody and honor who they are in a relationship, then what they have to give into your life remains through honor.
Nice. Thank you so much, Christine. This has been a very interesting conversation. We dove deep into how good is God. And I'm excited for your book release. I
Thank
wish
you.
you huge success because the book, the book is a divine playbook, and the way it's written is easily accessible or it allows for easy assimilation. I enjoyed reading it. I would continue reading it. I liked learning your perspective and, reading theology. I love that your writing challenges, I'd like to say, the written or the rigid structure through which things occur. I don't want to be like specific, but like it causes people to step outside of that box and see things from a different perspective. And I like that. I appreciate that a lot. So I love that you've written that into a book and that I have it and that I can keep going through it and learn from it. Yes, because I
Thank
like
you.
your writing. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me here. Where
Thank you.
can listeners find your book when it's out?
My book will be available at all of your online retailers. You can find it anywhere, anywhere. If you happen to be in the United States, you can purchase one directly from me at
Oh, lovely.
kristenwambach.com.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure. I wish you a
I
lovely day.
I love hanging out with you because you just it is, I'll use the word easy, but that doesn't it's a free there's freedom here.
Oh, I appreciate that.
There's freedom here.
Thank you. I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to write down that quote. There's freedom here. Love it. Thank you so, so
You
much.
there's freedom
Yes.
here. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. You have a lovely day.
You too.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.